All right. You guys think I'm going to rip this? No. Does somebody want to come up here and rip this? So, hold on. Wait a minute. No, go up the stairs like a normal person. Guys, it's just money. It's not a big deal. All right? I have more. It's actually Dr. Marmer's, so it's okay. Hold on. But I need you to understand inflation. The phone used to cost how much? $1,000. It now costs, say it, $1,400. Thank you. So pay attention. Closer attention. How much value did your money lose? $400. Theoretically, the same exact phone, the same phone I don't do it yet because I don't want to be in that shop. It's Dr. Marmer's money, so I'm over here. The same phone that cost $1,000 now costs $1,400. You lost value of your money. You lost $400 because it cost you $400 more for the same exact device. Go ahead. One nice rip. Just one. Wait, hold on, wait. Oh, you gotta do another one. Do it again. Hold on. I can't put it back together if you rip it more. Okay. Do you guys understand inflation? Do you have any questions? What's your question? So that's a whole other conversation. So, inflation is normally apples to apples. 2% milk, 1 gallon, 2% milk, 1 gallon. You made a wonderful point. Who's your econ teacher? Miss Whalen. Miss Whalen, wonderful job. Give Miss Whalen a hand. You cannot, in inflation, you cannot compare buying an iPhone X to an iPhone 14. We did it for fun, just so you guys can see me rip money. All right? Guys, hold on. It's fake money. It's illegal to rip money, so that's why I normally do it in my classroom, but in front of all of you, I had to use fake money. The point holds true. You can't do 2% milk and then almond milk. They're two completely separate products. For inflation, it's got to be apples to apples, oranges to oranges. If that doesn't make sense, raise your hand. Give me a few things that cost more today than it did last year for you, and then we're going to get started.
Egg.
Gas. Gas. I drive a lot. Go ahead. A house? I bought my house during COVID. Great time to buy. Great time to sell today. The state? Arizona iced tea used to be 99 cents. When they put $1.09 on that can, it broke my heart. Chicken. Big chicken? Oh, a McChicken. Say it again, eggs? A car. All right, so you guys fully comprehend inflation. I'm excited about that. Thank you guys for being here. I did not memorize everybody. I have to thank you. So to avoid getting in trouble, I'm going to read. So, now that we have your attention, right, now that you guys, hopefully you're a little bit excited, hopefully that inflation lesson, I didn't see any hands go up, so I'm extremely happy that you guys grasped that concept at least, all right? You'll get out of today what you put in. You do not need to take notes. You can put all of your notes, all of your bags, all of your pens, put them away. The entire event's being recorded, all right? Ask questions, engage. They are here for you. They took the day off of work to come. They're excited to give back, all right? The entire video will be sent out. If you like something that Ms. Grant, Ms. McNair, or Mr. Liesman say, if you like some of the questions your peers ask and the responses, you don't need to waste your time writing it down. We will send everybody the video. We're good? All right. So, first we have to thank everybody that made this possible. So you don't have to clap. There's a lot of people, so we'll just run through it quick. All of our VE students that helped organize the event. Mr. Cockton, don't clap because it'll take forever. Mr. Cottignola and Mr. Fernandez, two of the teachers that were intricate in putting together the lessons you got in your econ classes and the pamphlets that you should have received. Also the entire SO, Ms. G, Ms. Whitney, I don't know if you're here, thank you. Mr. Sire in the back, Ms. Ali, Ms. J. Prashad, Ms. McGurk, Mr. Rio, Dr. Marmer. Everyone I missed, I'm sorry. Your support was amazing. Now you can give me a hand. Mr. Sharma, the president of VE, is here. He is who brought VE to Francis Lewis well over a decade ago. So thank you, Mr. Sharma, for being here and all your support. Also, we have to thank the CEE. Most of you haven't seen their logo before. You will soon. The CEE is the Council for Economic Education. They set the state standards for your economics classes. All right, so if you like the content you're covering, yes, thank your teachers and the AP, but you can thank the CEE as well. I'll be sharing some resources from the CEE this week and next week. They couldn't make it today. They send their best regards. They have some competitions coming up. They are all financial literacy competitions. They all result in scholarships and $1,000 to $5,000 awards in cash. You guys don't sound impressed. Okay, all right, I like it. All right, so the CEE, real quick, I promised I would do this. They transform lives through financial education. What I share with you will go through your econ teachers, so just be on the lookout for your econ teachers to share all the competitions and content coming up. We have to thank Alex Privatera. Please give her a hand from CNBC. This would not be possible if she wasn't reading my 11:30 p.m. emails. So please give her another hand for all the work she did. All right. I'm not going to speak on the CNBC mentors you have today. We have students that will introduce them, so I do apologize for not doing that. But I do want to tell you guys why you're here. All right, so really quickly, when I was young, and some of us talked about it earlier, it might happen at your kitchen table, you're not supposed to talk about money. Parents don't want you to talk about money, it's rude. I don't talk about money with my brother, it's considered rude. Culturally, it's never been appropriate to discuss your salary or discuss your investments, good or bad. The problem with not discussing money, then you have hundreds of thousands of people, 4,000 students, 1,200 here, that can't talk about money because they've been told not to. Does that make sense? If you can't talk about it, you cannot make smart financial decisions. The hope of today is that you leave here and you have the foundation to talk about money, to make smarter financial decisions. Good? All right? So, don't feel embarrassed. Ask questions. They're going to break a lot of this content down to your level. All right? If you have questions, please, we have VE students and microphones. We'll definitely get to those questions. Pay attention, be engaged, be excited. And again, we'll share the recording. Please give everybody a hand that's about to come up. The way it'll operate, to give you a timeline, we'll have students introduce the people that are going to be on stage. Then we'll open it up for questions about halfway through. So please just hold your questions until we ask, or if I see some hands, we might pick on you during the crowd. Janai, I'll pass this off to you.
Now, to show off, to give a prime example of how this information is going to change your life, we have a Francis Lewis High School alumni with a background in finance. He'll be moderating our fireside chat later today with Q&A. He studies computer science at St. John's with a unique focus in finance because he believes that learning and teaching people how to manage their finances is the key to a better future. Everybody, please give it up for Mr.
Just one. Wait, hold on, wait. Oh, you gotta do another one. Do it again. Hold on, I can't put it back together if you rip it more. Okay. Do you guys understand inflation? Do you have any questions? What's your question? So that's a whole other conversation. So, inflation is normally apples to apples. 2% milk, 1 gallon, 2% milk, 1 gallon. You made a wonderful point. Who's your econ teacher? Miss Whalen. Miss Whalen, wonderful job. Give Miss Whalen a hand. You cannot, in inflation, you cannot compare buying an iPhone X to an iPhone 14. We did it for fun, just so you guys can see me rip money. All right? Guys, hold on. It's fake money. It's illegal to rip money, so that's why I normally do it in my classroom, but in front of all of you, I had to use fake money. The point holds true. You can't do 2% milk and then almond milk. They're two completely separate products. For inflation, it's got to be apples to apples, oranges to oranges. If that doesn't make sense, raise your hand. Give me a few things that cost more today than they did last year for you, and then we're going to get started.
Eggs.
Gas. Gas. I drive a lot. Go ahead. A house? I bought my house during COVID. Great time to buy. Great time to sell today. The state? Arizona iced tea used to be 99 cents. When they put $1.09 on that can, it broke my heart. Chicken. Big chicken? Oh, a McChicken. Say it again, eggs? A car. All right, so you guys fully comprehend inflation. I'm excited about that. Thank you guys for being here. I did not memorize everybody I have to thank you. So to avoid getting in trouble, I'm going to read. So, now that we have your attention, right, now that you guys, hopefully you're a little bit excited, hopefully that inflation lesson, I didn't see any hands go up, so I'm extremely happy that you guys grasped that concept at least, all right? You'll get out of today what you put in. You do not need to take notes. You can put all of your notes, all of your bags, all of your pens, put them away. The entire event's being recorded, all right? Ask questions, engage. They are here for you. They took the day off of work to come. They're excited to give back, all right? The entire video will be sent out. If you like something that Ms. Grant, Ms. McNair, or Mr. Liesman say, if you like some of the questions your peers ask and the responses, you don't need to waste your time writing it down. We will send everybody the video. We're good? All right. So, first we have to thank everybody that made this possible. So you don't have to clap. There's a lot of people, so we'll just run through it quick. All of our VE students that helped organize the event. Mr. Compton, don't clap because it'll take forever. Mr. Cotagnola and Mr. Fernandez, two of the teachers that were intricate in putting together the lessons you got in your econ classes and the pamphlets that you should have received. Also the entire SO, Ms. G, Ms. Whitney, I don't know if you're here, thank you. Mr. Sire in the back, Ms. Ali, Ms. J. Prashad, Ms. McGurk, Mr. Rio, Dr. Marmer. Everyone I missed, I'm sorry. Your support was amazing. Now you can give them a hand. Mr. Sharma, the president of VE, is here. He is who brought VE to Francis Lewis well over a decade ago. So thank you, Mr. Sharma, for being here and all your support. Also, we have to thank the CEE. Most of you haven't seen their logo before. You will soon. The CEE is the Council for Economic Education. They set the state standards for your economics classes. All right, so if you like the content you're covering, yes, thank your teachers and the AP, but you can thank the CEE as well. I'll be sharing some resources from the CEE this week and next week. They couldn't make it today. They send their best regards. They have some competitions coming up. They are all financial literacy competitions. They all result in scholarships and $1,000 to $5,000 awards in cash. You guys don't sound impressed. Okay, all right, I like it. All right, so the CEE, real quick, I promised I would do this. They transform lives through financial education. What I share with you will go through your econ teachers, so just be on the lookout for your econ teachers to share all the competitions and content coming up. We have to thank Alex Privatera. Please give her a hand from CNBC. This would not be possible if she wasn't reading my 11:30 p.m. emails. So please give her another hand for all the work she did. All right. I'm not going to speak on the CNBC mentors you have today. We have students that will introduce them, so I do apologize for not doing that. But I do want to tell you guys why you're here. All right, so really quickly, when I was young, and some of us talked about it earlier, it might happen at your kitchen table, you're not supposed to talk about money. Parents don't want you to talk about money, it's rude. I don't talk about money with my brother, it's considered rude. Culturally, it's never been appropriate to discuss your salary or discuss your investments, good or bad. The problem with not discussing money, then you have hundreds of thousands of people, 4,000 students, 1,200 here, that can't talk about money because they've been told not to. Does that make sense? If you can't talk about it, you cannot make smart financial decisions. The hope of today is that you leave here and you have the foundation to talk about money, to make smarter financial decisions. Good? All right? So, don't feel embarrassed. Ask questions. They're going to break a lot of this content down to your level. All right? If you have questions, please, we have VE students and microphones. We'll definitely get to those questions. Pay attention, be engaged, be excited. And again, we'll share the recording. Please give everybody a hand that's about to come up. The way it'll operate, to give you a timeline, we'll have students introduce the people that are going to be on stage. And then we'll open it up for questions about halfway through. So please just hold your questions until we ask. Or if I see some hands, we might pick on you during the crowd. Janai, I'll pass this off to you.
Now, to show off, to give a prime example of how this information is going to change your life, we have a Francis Lewis High School alumni with a background in finance. He'll be moderating our fireside chat later today with Q&A. He studies computer science at St. John's with a unique focus in finance because he believes that learning and teaching people how to manage their finances is the key to a better future. Everybody, please give it up for Mr. Saket Nekkanti. Please welcome our next speaker, Emily Gao.
Thank you. Let's do something real quick. Show of hands. Who loves money? Like, loves it, needs it, wants more of it? Come on now. I know y'all love money. Yeah. Well, it's about time we did not just love money, but understood money. Born and raised in Central New Jersey, our next speaker, Kamaron McNair, began her career with LendingTree, writing some pretty crazy content on consumer debt and spending. Sounds familiar, huh? Spending money. She then took her talents to Skim before becoming a lead money reporter at CNBC Make It, where she covers all things personal finance, student debt, money management, and economic inequality. Her favorite thing about this country is the First Amendment and freedom of speech, evident in her writing. She even helped build an orphanage about a decade ago. She does it all, and she's here for you today. Give it up for Kamaron McNair. Please welcome our next speaker, Zicheng Chen.
Choices. We make choices every day. But how do you know that you made the right choice? Luckily, we have one of the top financial advisors with some of the strongest credentials in the industry here today. She is a financial journalist, a CFP, a certified financial planner, and her job is to literally help plan your future. During college, she wrote bi-weekly columns called Deal of the Day, featuring articles ranging from tuition to hidden telephone fees for college students. They say time is money, but what if I tell you, by choosing to be here today, she can make you a little bit smarter and a little bit wealthier in the next 15 minutes. Seniors, please give your warmest welcome to the Deputy Personal Finance Editor from CNBC Digital, Kelli Grant. Next, please welcome our next speaker, Ebony Stapleton.
I'm Ebony Stapleton, and I'm thrilled for what's about to occur here today. Our final CNBC speaker is one of the most important figures in economic reporting worldwide, and you have the pleasure of having him as one of your mentors for the next 90 minutes. He's an Emmy Award and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, known for reporting on financial crisis and international economics. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, but you can find him on CNBC's daily Dayside shows, explaining what the latest Fed moves mean. And at night, catch him crushing it on the guitar, playing to covers of his favorite band, The Grateful Dead, with his own band, Stella Blues. So from CNBC to your auditorium, please give a Francis Lewis welcome to the legendary Mr. Steve Liesman.
Ebony's going to introduce him at every event he goes to moving forward. Mr. Liesman, the floor is yours.
Hey, what's happening? I still have almost no idea what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to figure it out. Here's the deal. I agree with almost everything that was said earlier, but there's one thing I want to add, what today could be about if you wanted to. What today could be about is what future you says to today you, right? So we talked a lot about the choices you make and things like that. So the choices you make today are going to be those that you're going to look back on 5 years, 3 years, 10 years from now and say, that was really smart, or that was really stupid. And a lot of it has to do with money, but I'm not so much a fan of the money thing as I am the happiness thing, right? So my dad came home miserable every day from work. I kind of made up my mind that no matter what I did in my life, I wasn't going to be miserable at my job. I was going to enjoy my job. And I got really lucky being able to find a job and a career that I really enjoy, which is to do journalism, then do economics, and then just kind of apply yourself at it. But I think that money is a way to happiness, but it's not the same thing as happiness. And it's one of the things that economics and the economy try to think about and distinguish. And I want to talk about the difference between the economy and economics. And one is sort of a mathematical thing, and you know that thing, they promised me there'd be no math. So we're not going to do a lot of math here, but we're going to do a little bit of math. You know, economics is when we tally up everything that everybody does. You go to work, your taxi drivers, and you pay your rent, and your restaurants and everything. And I was just looking it up today. New York City is, if it was a country, has all of that economic activity of what would be the 20th largest country in the world. Just a little bit below Spain and Canada. You are in the middle of one of the biggest, wealthiest cities that ever existed in the history of humankind. That's where you are right now. So look on the street, look at what's going on. All of that is the economy. And it's how people make decisions about this. But economics is a little different. It's a little bit more about how we think about things and understanding what the costs are. And have y'all heard of this concept of opportunity cost? Yeah, pretty good. So opportunity cost, actually last night I looked up on AI, how do I teach opportunity cost to a bunch of high school seniors? So they gave me a stupid example. I'll give you a better one, but the one they gave me is, let's say a pizza costs $10 and a movie costs $20. So the opportunity cost of going to the movie is not buying 2 pizzas. Does that make sense? No? So 2 pizzas is $20, the movie's $20. So the next alternative is the opportunity cost. So when you think about going to a concert, the ticket may cost you $50, but the opportunity cost of that concert is not investing that money and earning the interest that you would earn on that and not saving that money for future you. So I believe you should go to as many concerts as you could possibly afford, personally speaking. However, when you go to that concert, remember, you're spending that money now and not saving it for future you. It says there I should talk about how we cover the markets. I have no idea how we cover the markets. It's just something that we do every day, and it's tomorrow morning you want to tune in at 8:30 because the job report comes out, and the job report is something that's watched all over the world because the United States and the United States economy is so central and important to what happens in the entire world. They're going to be tuning in Asia and Africa and Latin America and Canada and Mexico to find out how many jobs were created in the United States and what that means for the economy here and what the Federal Reserve is going to do with interest rates. I'm not going to go through all that. But I do want to do one thing here about how we grow. Because how we grow as individuals, how we grow as an economy, there's two ways. Can we go to, here we go, okay. 2 ways to grow. You can work harder or you can work smarter. And I want to go through this baseline example, which has not been approved by your professor. So tell me if I got this wrong, okay? Let's say you got one worker, one person, and they're making 10 widgets a day, and they work 5 days a week. They make 50 widgets a week. So if I want to work harder, well, one thing you do is you hire another person. 2 workers do 20 widgets a day times 5 days, 100 widgets a week. You double the output, but you also double the work. Is that the best way to do it? Let's say one of you brilliant high school seniors comes up with a new widget gizmo. And this widget gizmo allows a single worker to come up with 20 widgets a day, times 5 days is 100 widgets a week. You double your output for the same amount of work. That's working smarter. Now, a widget gizmo is one thing. You can also think about smarter ways to work, more efficient ways to work, but that's how you want to grow. And we call that productivity, and it's probably the most important economic concept, is how efficient you are with your work and your time. Because now, I double the output, I can decide not to double the output, I can take a day off. And that's one of the reasons we have weekends here, is because we've been so much more productive. You think I'm kidding? Take a look at the next chart. This is corn output per acre. Okay, and you can see we didn't do much of anything from 1866 to 1936, and then something happened, something changed in a big way, and we were able to put out much more corn per acre. What does that mean? It means fewer people tilling the soil, fewer people getting up on the farm at the crack of dawn to feed the chickens, and then and all of a sudden there's more food out there for much less work. And that's part of how this economy has progressed. It's one of the reasons you have these things here, because productivity has continued to go up and we've continued to live better as a result of productivity. Now here's something you might relate to, which is computer processing. Computational capacity of the fastest computers has gone straight up. This is the number of floating point operations, don't worry about that. The fact is, none of you people in this room has ever used a floppy disk, right? You don't even know what I'm talking about. But that's how we used to do. You can see on the next chart what's happened to the cost of computing. It's come way down. As a society, as an economy, we've gotten to be much more efficient, much more productive, and that's one of the keys to how our economy gets better. But then we have a thing like inflation come along, and prices rise. Part of the inflation problem was what happened in the pandemic, was our supplies of things from places like Asia and places like Latin America. We had a problem with the supply. Things got harder and harder to find, so the price went up. What do we got here? Look at that. CPI. You guys are great in the back there. Just kidding me. I don't even know we had these charts. So things got up in price, and now what happened is prices went up, but also wages went up to an extent. And so the real story you want to know is not just how much prices are rising, it's how much your wages are rising. So one of the things that just happened, do you all hear about, there was a big auto workers strike. One of the things they had a strike for was higher wages. So you want to come up, the prices rise, wages should rise along with that, but they should also rise with how productive and efficient they are. So the story here is, when you think about economics, what looks on the surface like something that is obvious may not be so obvious. We have this idea in economics, which is probably the only one that matters overall. There is no free lunch. If you think you're getting a free lunch, you haven't thought about what the costs are. And so one of the things that I think my colleagues are going to be much better than I am at this, which is to tell you where those costs are in what you're doing and how much you're really paying for things that you don't really know about. We talked about Professor Powers earlier. Look at the fine print, because the fine print's going to tell you what the cost is. So think these things through, and I'll stop right here except to say, be kind to your future self, because your future self will come back and thank you for how smart you were today.
Hi, thanks
so.
Steve, that was a really great introduction. Hi again, I'm Kamaron McNair, I'm a money reporter for CNBC Make It.
And I'm Kelli Grant. I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm the deputy personal finance editor for CNBC.
Yeah, so, thank you. We're here to talk to you about, how the money matters to you. Obviously, the economy is going to affect you in kind of different ways. The job market, if it's bad, then it's going to be hard for you to find a job. If things are expensive, then it's hard to live. Frankly, we've all experienced that through inflation, as prices gone up, and things like that. But to get kind of started with, I know a lot of you are taking personal finance courses or have a basic understanding, but a lot of us don't. I didn't get that in high school.
I definitely did not.
Yeah, so but you're going to get pushed out into the real world, and you're going to have to know and figure out, how do I pay rent? How do I buy groceries for myself? Eventually, how do I have my own health insurance? Things like that. So we're here to give you kind of a foundational understanding of those things.
But the truth, honestly, about personal finance is it's something that you consistently are going to need to learn more about throughout your life. There's no financial literacy class that is one and done. You're always going to want to ask questions and educate yourself, because the products change, the market changes. So even if you're looking at something like picking a bank account or a credit card, what you do today is not going to be the same way that you make that decision in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the line. So always be thinking about what don't you know and how you can figure it out. So I think, Saket, were you going to start us off with questions, or do you want us to just riff?
Alright, so all of us here, or at least a couple of us, are planning to go to college, right? Next year? How many of us want to go to college? That's most of us, so we're gonna start going into student debt, and then again, a lot of loans are gonna be taken out. What is one thing we need to really watch out for when we choose who we take our loans from? Whether it's from a bank or someone else or even a family member.
So yeah, paying for college might be the kind of first major financial lesson a lot of you go through. We did a survey, I think it was around 40% of you don't really know how you're going to pay for college yet, and that's fine, because you'll find out once you get your acceptance letter how much money is the college giving me and things like that. So it'll probably come from a variety of sources. It might all come from your parents writing a check, and that's wonderful. It might come from scholarships. It might come from loans. A lot of us, I myself, had to take out loans to go to college. And I'm sure you all also hear that there's a student debt crisis in this country. There's millions of people who are thousands of dollars in debt from their educations. They either feel like they can't pay them off, or they can't pay them off, period. They don't have, their wages aren't keeping up, or they didn't finish college, so they can't get a higher paying job necessarily, or they're struggling in that. But to answer your question, loans are a big thing. And basically there's federal loans and there's private loans. And federal loans, as much as they are kind of a problem, they are your friend. In terms of, if you have to borrow money to go to college, try to stick with just federal loans, because that's the government saying, here, we'll give you some money, we want you to go to college, we know how important it is and how much it can help you get ahead, that we're going to loan you this money. We're not going to, when the federal loans do it, or when you go through federal loans, you don't need a credit score. You don't need a credit check to do it. You don't need to have a credit history. They just know you're a student, you want to go to school, here is this money. And federal loans come with a lot of protections and programs that allow you to, first of all, you won't have to pay them while you're in school. So you can kind of get through and like, yes, you'll have this debt looming over you and you should consider it, think about it, how much you are taking out. But you can get through college, pay for your classes, and then graduate and be able to, there's a law in place to help you manage those loans. The idea is college should pay off. Should be a payoff. It should be worth it. So there are programs in place. So if you want to become a teacher, there's a 10-year, if you get federal loans, you can graduate and go be a teacher and pay those loans for 10 years. And hopefully there's a lot of different ways that you can keep or lower the monthly payment based on your salary and things like that. And then they'll forgive your loans. Some of you might have seen in the news a lot of student loan borrowers and other people in the country were hoping that President Biden was going to be able to forgive everybody's student loans or a chunk of everybody's student loans, and that didn't happen with the Supreme Court. Still a work in progress for that happening for more people, but for you sitting in these chairs, it's probably not going to be, unless there is a pretty radical, in one sense, president in the future that says no more student debt or no more student loans, but that we've seen the Supreme Court's there are forgiveness programs, but it's probably, at this point, not going to be something where everybody who has student loans gets them forgiven. That's kind of off the table for now.
Can I real quick, do you know the average or an estimate interest rate they can look at for a federal loan?
It resets every year, so you're going to want to pay attention to it every summer that resets, and you'll be able to see for federal loans what the rate is at that time. Typically, you're going to find that in a lot of interest rate environments, that is going to be better than what you'd see in the private space. But really, as Cameron said, the protections are what's key in federal loans versus private. They're there. And they have a lot more willingness and programs set in stone to help if you are having financial struggles. One of the common questions, too, that we'll get is, well, how much debt, and especially student debt, is too much? And there's a rule of thumb that you'll hear, not perfect like most rules of thumb, but generally you don't want to take on more in student debt than you expect to earn as your first salary coming out of school. So that's going to mean naturally, like if you're going into a very well-paid field like computer science or like finance jobs and where it's easy to get a job, then maybe you can afford to take on a little more student debt. But if you're going to be a journalism major like I was or something along those lines, that might be a little dicier to take on a lot of student loans because those jobs are typically not very well paid, particularly right out of school. And it's not a perfect rule, but it's an indicator that if you're taking on more debt than that salary might be, then you might have a harder time keeping up with that debt and paying it down.
How would you suggest they go about researching the average salary in their career path?
Well, there are a lot of good resources for that. There are great salary sites, Glassdoor.com, Salary.com, and a lot of good research out there about what a typical salary might be in a particular field, a job title, also where you plan to be after college matters. New York City might see better pay than the middle of the country somewhere. So you'll want to take all of that into account. And there are actually a lot of schools that have some data out there about like what graduates typically make, although take it with a grain of salt because obviously they want you to think going in that their graduates are incredibly successful, and they may well be, but the school might be putting a little shine on that too.
And I'll add that is something that the government is keeping an eye on. The government wants colleges to be preparing you to go, one, get a good job, and two, earn a decent salary. And so when they see colleges that are producing all these graduates, and yeah, they might have degrees, but why aren't they getting jobs? Why aren't they getting paid well? Well, maybe the college isn't really preparing them. Maybe the college is boosting their prices a little bit. So there's things like that. And yeah, so you can compare based on your school, you can compare based on your degree, you can compare just looking at, how much does an entry-level computer programmer make and see those salaries to give you an idea of what it looks like.
I just want to, for you guys, are you guys all right out there? Are you guys all right out there? I want to pass over to Mr. Liesman real quick because you guys are talking about the interest you're going to pay and then the ability to pay it back, how much of a loan you should take out, and if you're going to find a job to be able to pay it back. The jobs number comes out tomorrow. Where do you think the jobs number is tomorrow, and do you think they'll have a job in 4 years when they get out? Are you going to have a really good market for job opportunities in the next 4 years, or do you think it might be tighter and then they need to make sure they're networking and interning over the next 4 years? There we go. Because it may be a tighter market when you graduate. What do you think?
So I love all the advice that my colleagues have given. I have a slightly different take on some of it, and I'll get to your answer in a second. I think the most important thing is to go to a school where Professor Power is. I listened to his intro here and I'm like, that's what you want in your life. I remember I took a really lousy job in my first job out of college because there was a great editor there. So the advice I have is to listen to good people, work for good people, and the money sort of hopefully takes care of itself. I also think that a lot of these expensive colleges are really overrated in the sense that there's a lot of really good professors and really good programs at really good schools that don't have these big names, and the responsibility of getting an education is, and the kind of education you get is more on you than it is on the college. So you go to these places and you want to learn, I guarantee you there's somebody there who wants to teach you. But if you go there and you say, teach me, that's not how it works. So I think one of the things I would take out of what my colleagues were saying was, you know, it's value for your money. You go there and make it happen for yourself. I also think there's a little bit of a programmatic sensibility about what is right for the job market. Nobody knows how to train for the next job you're going to get. You want to be an accountant, you can go take accounting. If you want to be an engineer, you can go take engineering. And if you want lights, well, you become a lighting director.
On the plus side, we can see you all now. So.
Right. Hey, guys. But there's something interesting about college. And one of the things that is just true about college is people who graduate college have lower unemployment rates throughout their lifetime than people who do not graduate college. If you go and get some college, your unemployment rate over your lifetime is going to look like somebody who graduated high school more than it does look like somebody who graduated college. And God, we're not really sure why that is, but we have some suspicions why that is. One of the things you do in college is you take a lot of different classes, and you take all those different classes, and you show and learn how to be adaptable to what is ultimately a changing workplace and work environment. One of the things you can think about is, what happened to all the guys who did the horses and the buggies before when the car came out? They all lost their job. But the thinking is, had they been college graduates, they might have had the adaptability to change and adapt into the car business. You guys have the great opportunity and the great responsibility and difficulty of coming out of school at a time when things are changing dramatically. It is great to be a high school senior right now. It is very difficult to be a high school senior right now. And I think the extent to which you succeed is the extent to which you embrace the difficulty and embrace the opportunity. This AI thing's coming out. Nobody knows what it is. People say they know what it is, but I don't think anybody really knows. There's this thing called Bitcoin out there. Nobody really knows what that is. People say they know what it is, but nobody really knows. But if I'm a high school senior coming out, I'm like, Maybe I want to check out this AI thing. Maybe I want to think about places and things. The world is new every day. It's the thing I love about my job. I've been doing the same damn thing for 21 years, covering the Fed, covering the economy, and it's gorgeously and fabulously new to me every day to come in and cover history. And all that is open to you if you want to embrace it. If you want to get on one of those skywalks at the airport and have it all take you, you can. That's available to you. Or you can sort of walk around the skywalk, walk your own pace, do your own thing. It doesn't even answer anywhere near your question.
Not even a little bit. The jobs numbers tomorrow.
Oh, jobs tomorrow.
Where do you see jobs in the next 4 years for our students graduating?
So we have been through an extraordinary time period here of jobs. We've been hiring an awful lot of people. We've been hiring more people than we've had people to hire, which has been weird. So one of the things that's happened is a lot of people who were not in the workforce have come back into the workforce. And right now what's happening is the Federal Reserve is trying to slow the economy. And so the number of jobs, new jobs each month, is coming down. The number that Wall Street's looking for is 190,000. I think it might be a little bit less than that, because I think that employers are a little bit more cautious right now than they have been in the past. And so I think that number is going to come in a little bit more on the softer side, and that's going to be kind of good for the stock market, which wants to see the economy slow down a little bit from what was a really, really fast pace. Part of that fast pace of the economy is what created inflation, because there were too much money chasing too few goods. So if you slow the economy down, there's less money chasing those goods.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you.
Do you guys know what the Federal Reserve is? Yes? No?
Okay, really loud. On 3. Do you know the Federal Reserve? 1, 2, 3. I was like 50-50.
Yeah, that's a lot. Do you mind explaining what the Federal Reserve is and what it does?
Sure. Do we have 90 minutes left or no? Okay, so the Federal Reserve is a arm of Congress, essentially, created in 1913 to manage the amount of money out in the economy. And by managing the amount of, in this country, by the way, you don't probably know this, but sometime in the 19th century, there was a lot of different money out there. Banks had their own money, companies had their own money. Sometime around, I forget when it was, 1860 or so, I was just a small child then, they unified the currency in this country, and so they needed somebody to figure out how much currency should be out there at any one time. How many dollars should be there? How do you figure that out? How do you know? So you have this Federal Reserve, which is made up of representatives from 12 different Federal Reserve banks around the country, and a Board of Governors in Washington. And the Board of Governors is nominated by the President, approved by the Senate. The presidents are approved by the different banks' board of directors to come in and represent their regions. Like there's somebody from St. Louis, there's somebody from Kansas City, there's somebody from San Francisco, somebody from Texas. That's where the 12 Federal Reserve banks are. And they decide what's called monetary policy. Essentially, monetary policy is, I guess the easy way to put it is, how much is money going to cost? How much should it cost to borrow money to build a house? How much should it cost to borrow money to start a new company? And the Fed sets an interest rate that governs all the banks in the country about how much they're going to lend in one single thing, which is overnight, and they try to govern the economy to make it go slower or faster according to how much capacity there is in the economy. So those are 25 different complicated concepts, but more or less that's what they do.
And from a consumer perspective, what you guys will see when the Fed changes interest rates, that will mean it is more or less expensive to borrow money. You see some rates are more closely tied to what the Fed does than others. So your credit card, if you have one, that rate's going to go up when they raise rates. If you're saving money, that often influences savings rates as well. So you'll see that's really, for consumers, a lot of the big effect where you really feel what the Fed is in how much you pay or how much you get if you're saving.
So we had a few questions from the audience. I'm going to read one. I don't know who wrote it down, so I apologize, but I'll read the question for you. a variable or a fixed rate, what would you recommend for them? If you're taking on debt, a variable interest rate, which would change as the Fed changes their policy, or a fixed rate where they have one definitive percentage they'd be paying back over time. What would you recommend today?
Honestly, a lot of your options, it's going to depend on the type of loan that you take out. You know, if you're talking like you're buying a house, oftentimes people want a fixed interest rate, and you can get fixed or variable. If you're talking about a credit card, unfortunately, you're not going to get a fixed rate there. The closest you're going to get is you've got a variable rate on your card, and they might say, hey, we're going to give you 0% for a set amount of time. You know, and a lot of it depends too on where interest rates are going. If you were talking about something like a mortgage and you were thinking this might go down soon, then maybe a variable rate makes sense. A lot of people like having it fixed and locked in though, especially like when you're looking at, you know, we've had the Fed do a lot of rate hikes. Sorry, the chart is no longer up there, so I can't reference it. You know, when you see these go up, you know, that can be really scary, and it can be one of the things that makes it harder for people to dig out of credit card debt. So if you can lock in a rate and you can get a fixed rate, that's great. In a lot of cases, though, you're not going to have that choice, unfortunately.
All right, back to, say, colleges.
Let me weigh in real quickly on that, which is, there's going to be lots of people out there in your life that's going to offer you money and interest rates. Just make sure when you do something like that, you understand what you're doing. Part of this whole student debt crisis we have is people have not understood it. Part of the problem we had in 2008 when people got all these loans, they didn't understand it. You have a right to understand when you borrow money, what you're borrowing at, what you're borrowing for, and whether or not that is the best deal. Somebody comes to you with a deal, you say, okay, thanks very much, hang up the phone, call somebody else, see if there's a better deal out there. You have a right to a better deal, you have a right to shop. Part of what makes this economy work or not work is how smart you guys are as consumers. All this stuff is probably way into your future, mortgages, loans, stuff like that. But the advice of you can shop around and you need to understand what you're getting into. When you borrow on a credit card, you need to know what that interest rate is going to be when you don't pay the credit card back. And you need to understand if that interest rate is going to change over time. Part of what matters in this whole thing is that you own these choices you make. And if you own them, you will pay less money and you'll do better over time if you own it and ask questions and say, I don't know what you're talking about, explain it to me. You have that right.
There are also some great calculators, too, to elaborate on that point, where you could put in, for example, you know, how much you're borrowing and say, okay, well, what is this, you know, 5% interest rate sounds great in, you know, abstract, but like, what does that actually mean in terms of how much that adds on to my monthly payment if it's something that you're taking out a loan and then paying it back?
Do you have any off the top of your head that you can share? I know I've used Bankrate before for
Bankrate has some
mortgages.
great
Anything for student
calculators.
debt that they can
NerdWallet
calculate?
does.
NerdWallet we had up on screen, you guys probably
Yeah.
saw while you were waiting.
Creditcards.com too. Yeah, there's a lot in terms of, and honestly that would work well, even if it's called, say, a credit card calculator or a mortgage calculator, you can essentially put in the balance as if it were other types of loans, and you're just sort of playing around with the numbers to say, okay, it's this interest rate, it's this term, and you can get a sense of what that
So recommendation to you guys, you have to find, would you suggest that they leave here today, go find a calculator and find out how much their student debt is going to cost?
Absolutely. That was one of my big mistakes, I would say, going into college, was I remember having the discussion with my mother, and this was how much I was going to borrow in each of these years. And I just remember thinking, like, great, okay, so like that total is going to be, I think I was thinking it was like $10,000, and then when I graduated and I got the letter from my servicer and it was almost 20, I was like, where on earth did that come from? Because I didn't understand it at the time when I was 18 and taking these loans out. So absolutely, get a sense of what this amount looks like, and then what it's going to look like in 4 years when you're graduating from college, and that becomes your new total.
Is there any chance, either one of you, and you're in the industry a lot more than we are, is there any chance you can ballpark, if somebody took out $50,000 for college, what would they be paying back? Because they're not just paying back $50,000. What's their total payback?
It would be challenging to ballpark it. I did not, my calculator's upstairs. Because you're talking about every year those loan rates reset for federal loans. And if it was 50,000, you're probably also talking not just federal, but private, which are going to have their own rates. And that is honestly a problem that a lot of students contend with when they're coming out, is they don't just have, it's not like you're getting one total and it is, this is the amount. It might be, half a dozen or so loans, all of which that have different rates, and you have to figure out how you're going to manage those, because you could be paying those, and that is, individual bills. You could be trying to do something with consolidating them, or, we wouldn't recommend necessarily refinancing them, which is taking them and making them a new private loan. You will get a lot of pitches about that. Be very careful. You're going to lose all those protections that Kamaron talked about with the federal student loans. So it's hard to ballpark, but that's something that you'd want to pay attention as you're taking on new debt, trying to project forward what that's going to look like at graduation, and then what that is going to turn into in terms of a payment going into your adulthood.
And I can add, I think part of the confusion that caused the student debt crisis, and something that I experienced when I was going through my college process, was I got this letter from my college. You're in, here's how much financial aid we're going to give you. Here's a grant that you don't have to pay back. Here's a scholarship from some guy that you don't know, but you're welcome. And then they said, and, here's some federal student loans, and here's how much you owe today, $0. And I was skipping down the street. I was like, I just got a full ride to college. I don't have to pay for college. I'm like, Mom, where's my car? Because I don't have to pay for college. And it didn't, I knew about student loans. I had older siblings who were fighting Sally Mae because they had private student loans, and it was a nightmare. So I knew to avoid that, but I was like, this is from the government. So I don't know what it is. It's money that I don't have to see or think about today. And that was great, but then I graduated, and I had $30,000 of debt. And I was like, oh, again, kind of where did this come from? Or I didn't have a choice, because it was either that or not go to college. But if I had understood, I guess at the time, that these are things that you have to pay back, and that they are growing over time. I think there's a tip in here. I said if you can make interest payments while you're in school, to do that. Because it might be, just $50 a month that you can pay, but that's helping you, because what happens is student loan interest capitalizes daily. Whereas your credit card, they're only looking once a month to see how much is still over or left over that they're going to add interest to. Every day, your student loans are racking up a little bit more interest. So you might take out $30,000 in loans at the beginning, and then you're going to graduate with $40,000, $50,000, I don't know, it depends. But it grows while you're there. But if you're chipping away at it, even if you don't have to, that balance will be a little bit smaller when you get out.
All right, I want to ask Saket a question. I was checking the answer before. Saket's at St. John's right now. Saket, can you talk to us about your experience? How are you paying for school, and what decisions had to be made for that?
So I got very lucky with this. My parents are immigrants. They came out from India, but my dad was very big on finance. So he started when he works for a company called Moody's. So when he started working, he started saving some money in the bank that both his employer and him put money into for my college. So I got lucky. I got a scholarship to St. John's University, and then that saved money it's kind of like a 401k, where it would be invested into a sort of group of stocks, and then when that time comes to pay for college, you could sell that, and then that's how I got my college paid off. So he used that money he saved from when I was born, 2005 till now, and the college paid the other half, and so I technically don't have to take out any loans. So
Lucky, because of your parents' decision, right?
Hey, Professor, are there resources at the school people can go into?
There's a college office. The college office should have been pushing in, and they have been pushing into your classrooms. The only issue that we have, and maybe you all can attest to this, if they don't ask the college office questions, the college office can't help.
Bingo. That's it.
So,
Go knock on the door. We know what we know about student loans, but those guys, they know a whole lot more. And they're going to help you. So, again, gifts out to the whole thing. Ask the right questions. Ask the right people the right questions. you got questions about how to fund. It's not, at the end of the day, as dire in all cases as it sounds. A lot of people got into a bad situation, but there are ways to manage it, and I would rely heavily on your school here or the school where you're going. They will help you if you ask them questions.
Are student loans worth it?
Maybe, it depends. It's a very stock personal finance.
How many of you guys want to hear the answer to that question? Are student loans worth it? Wow, okay. Who said no in the back? Oh boy. Don't say it again.
There's a couple of questions within there though. Is that one that a lot of people ask is college worth it? And Steve kind of touched on that before, where there is a lot of data out there that show that getting a bachelor's degree can help you with increased earnings and employment throughout your career. The gap narrows a little bit, if I remember correctly, for getting a master's degree. So even higher education, it's going to be very dependent on the field. But I think it's important to note that there are a lot of different ways to get more education at this point. There are some very good trade programs and apprenticeships that can help you get a very well-paid job. College can look different for everyone too. There can be great 2-year programs, 4-year programs. You could start at a community college and then go off to a bigger school. It really is up to you how creative you are. I know there are a lot of folks here, I think you mentioned earlier, that they're getting some college credit for certain programs that they're doing even in high school. It can be a great way to get ahead. AP classes. The more that you can do in advance is going to help you out with fewer credits that you need to be able to get through college, perhaps even faster. It's a 4-year program, but you do it in 3. College of some kind has been shown to be worth it in a lot of cases. The student debt is the part that you want to be careful about, and that's where, yes, if you can manage to get through and you can do it without debt by being creative, that is a wonderful way to do it. If you do have to take on debt, that's where you have to ask yourself, like, how much of it is worth it? Is this the right program? Is this the right school? Could I be doing this in a different way that would help me leave with less debt and a more sustainable amount of debt?
And I'll add too that I think when I talk to experts about this question, and people that are in the college space, people in the finance space as well, there's so much in college that is just priceless, and it's easy to say that having been to college and I wouldn't change my experience for the world. You make friends, you play sports, you join clubs, you do all these things aside from job training and doing internships and things that really are worth what I paid or what I'm still paying back, because I couldn't be in this position having not gone. Sure, I might have, or maybe I could have gotten here through other ways, and I'll never know. Hindsight, vision is 20/20. But for the life experience and for the exposure to different cultures, and if you're able to travel for college, that can be an incredibly eye-opening experience to see it. I kind of I'm from New Jersey and I stayed in New York, so I didn't really branch out and see the world that much. But I met people from all over the country and from different countries as well. That kind of helped me grow. It's really weird and scary to be 18, but college often, you don't have to live on campus to get the experience of that, but it does help. It's such a nice buffer into the real world where you can get, if you're not already have a job in high school, you get your first job while you're in college and you're learning how to manage these things, your time as well as your money, and you're growing as a person. And I think that to me made college invaluable.
So speaking of growth, you guys have a
Can I
slide up
just
for how to get
quickly on that, just what we're talking about there is what they call a network effect. It's not just friends. These are people who, when you come out of St. John's, you knock on the door and the guy was a St. John alumni, I'll see that guy. I know what he went through. I know what he got for his degree. It's a big part of it. One other thing I just want to bring up, how many people have used the kiosk at McDonald's to make you order? Okay, so that should tell you a little bit of something. The robots are coming for your job, all right? And one of the things that you might end up doing in college that you may not be able to do if you don't go to college is to get a job that keeps you a step ahead of the robots. And I'm saying that only half sarcastically, which is some of these trade jobs are great jobs, but I remember being at a jobs fair conference, and these employers were on there, we need you to come work for us, we need you to come work for us, we need you to have, oh yeah, we're working on this technology over here that will replace you, but we need you now to come work for us. So again, I think I made this point already, I'll make it again, which is one of the things you get out of college, I think, is the adaptability, the ability to change with the workforce. That's why people experience those lower unemployment rates, because the job market's going to change. You have to change with it over time. I am old enough to have been beginning writing my stories with Mimeo paper. We would write it on a typewriter, and I'd give one copy to the editor, and one copy to the other editor, and one copy for myself. And then over time, it got to be all computerized. That changed, I changed with it. If I couldn't change, if I couldn't use the computer, I'd be out of a job.
Can we move, let's move a little bit further from student debt. Credit cards, the first day of school, they're gonna get hit with, here's a Frisbee, here's a t-shirt, take out a 24% APR credit card. Can you talk to them about their credit score and credit cards? Oh, look, we have that up here.
So one of the money myths we had on a way earlier slide is just that all debt is bad. Really, debt is a tool, and it's going to be how you use it that determines whether it is good for you or bad for you. Credit cards are, I want to say, necessary evil, kind of, to an extent. You know, it's going to be something that it can help you when you're making a larger purchase that, like, you intend to pay off, but you cannot just do it all in one. They can be a safety net for some people who don't have savings. You know, you get a flat tire, your computer breaks, you need to take care of that. That can be a safety net there, but credit card debt it's pervasive in this country. We topped $1 trillion in credit card debt earlier this year. Average balances have been climbing, in part because interest rates are high. It can be a deep, dark hole that is very tough to dig out of. So you want to be careful as you start to delve in. How many people have a credit card here? I can sort of see you with the light. All right, so we've got I see a few hands, you know, and it's something that, like, you can use it to manage your money, you know, more as you get into adulthood and you've had income coming in. You want to be careful about which ones you pick. You want to make sure that you are paying off the balance in full. But really, the best way to think about a credit card is this is maybe one of the first things that you're going to have that's going to show up on what's called your credit report, and that is this document that details essentially how you use and manage credit. It's something that will be very important as you go on to make bigger purchases. If you're going to buy a car, if you want to buy a house someday, your student loans will show up on your credit report too. And this becomes the basis for you know, a record that a lot of entities look at. Either your report or your score might be something. Employers will sometimes look at your credit report. Landlords may look at your report or your score. There are a lot of people that want to see this information about how you manage it. So it's something to think about as you start managing both student loans and credit cards.
And why is it important to have a good credit score?
Well, you know, honestly, it's really going to matter when you go to buy a big purchase, you know, something like a house or a car. That's because, you know, most of us are not equipped to go plunk down the entire cost of that car or that house. So you're going to need to finance it. And so we could do an entire session on credit scores, but broadly speaking, they range from 300 to 850. The higher, the better. You will never see the same score that a bank sees when they're pulling it, but there are lots of ways you can get a sense of how good your credit is, including if you have certain bank relationships or credit cards, they'll give you a look at your score periodically. But essentially, the better your score, the more likely you are to be approved for a loan, so to get that credit, and the better rate that you'll get. And that can make a huge difference on these big purchases. Like, legitimately, the range, it can mean, you know, tens of thousands of dollars that you save on a house, and especially, or that you have to pay extra for your house or your car.
If you're going for a car loan, and let's say the company has one of these zero interest rates for 36 months, you can't get that loan if you have a lousy credit score.
Exactly.
It's one of those things, the system's rigged, folks. If you are great with credit, you can get a lot of credit. If you're lousy with credit and you actually need credit, it's really hard and expensive to get credit. So what's being said here is really important.
So do you guys understand 0% down for 36 months? Raise your hand if you don't got it. 0% down, 36 months. All right?
I've heard it on auto loan or car commercials, rather.
Right, so you see them on the car commercials, it means, hey, come in, buy the car, you don't have to give us any money. That's how they get you to buy the car. And then in 36 months, they hit you with a huge interest bill. That's why, again, what Mr. Liesman was saying, you guys have to make sure you read and understand what they're saying.
So are you guys comfortable sharing your credit scores? And if you are, how do you guys get it to where it was?
I don't know mine off the top of my head either, but and that's part of when we were just talking about like, well, when is a credit score important? It's like I am 15 years into my mortgage. I am almost done with a car loan that's 4 years old. I don't have any new credit cards. So like for me right now, my score doesn't matter as much because I don't need to use it for anything. It's going to matter more when you are looking ahead, whether that's a couple years out or a couple months out. You say, I see this need that like I might want a new credit card, or I'm thinking about buying a new car, and I know I don't have enough to pay that in full. That's when you really want to start paying attention to what's on your report, where your score is. And when you get your score, they'll give you like the number may not mean much in and of itself, but it'll tell you if it's okay, great, excellent, somewhere in that range, and it'll tell you why. Or if there's something that's hurting your score, they'll tell you that too, and that's the good information to pay attention to. It'll tell you where to go from there.
So how do we build a good credit score?
Right. So when you're starting out, it can be challenging because for banks, you're an unknown quantity, so they're not going to be super excited to lend to you. If your parents are willing and they have good credit, you have a good relationship with them to be able to ask them that, they might find that a deeply personal question. I know my parents did. They can add you as an authorized user or on their card, or co-sign on a card with you. And then that would mean that you are getting the benefit of good use of the credit card. You might also use something that's called a secured card, which is usually a very low limit. And it sounds like a really weird way to operate, but basically if you were to give the credit card issuer $100, then they would hang on to that and they'd say, okay, well you have now a $100 credit card limit that you can borrow against that. And eventually when you had good enough credit that you could show that you used that card responsibly, you bought things, you paid them off, then you could walk away back with your $100 and go off and get a more normal credit card where you're not paying for the use of it. So that could be another way to do it. Your student loans, as Cameron said, they're not going to check your credit to take those out. Once those are on your record, that becomes sort of a body of financial payments that they don't look at to see that you're managing that well. Continuing to make your loan payments on time will help you continue to improve.
Traffic's pretty good up here.
Yeah, so I think one thing, the biggest part of your credit score is that payment history, and that is, again, are you paying your bills on time and in full? Are you, when your credit card says here's how much is due, that is how much is due and you have to pay it. They don't care if you carry a balance. They want you to carry a balance because they're making more money off that. But you have to make that minimum monthly payment every single month. And so the thing about the credit score also is that it's a lifelong thing. And I think for like college students, they get a little nervous because you're thinking, well, in 10 years I want to buy a house, but I don't have a credit history. And that is something that you have to build up over time. So it's tempting to get a credit card when you're young to start. And it's a good idea once you're ready and responsible with it to start building in small ways. So that means like you get a credit card and you just put only $20 a month. I'm going to use it $20 and I'm going to pay it off so I'm not carrying debt. But that's helping you build your credit history. That's helping you, if you're staying on top of those payments, that's doing all of that for you. But you'll see here, like the length of your credit history, they're looking at how long have you been a customer of the economy. And so, if you go through college and you don't ever have a credit card, you might not have a credit history. But if you have student loans, that's a part of your credit history. And so you might have a score and you don't even know it yet. Once you have student loans or something like that. So these two small things, credit mix and new credit. Credit mix, it's looking at how many different kinds of products you have. So if you only have student loans and that's your whole credit score, you can still have a good credit score, but it won't be as good as it can be because they just know you can handle your student loans and that's great. But if
But
you're
they don't know how you can handle a car payment.
Exactly. They don't know if people with a mortgage and a car loan and a credit card, if they're managing all those well, they probably have a good credit score because the banks see, okay, say they can handle a number of different debts because that's all money is handling a lot of different things, different priorities, different responsibilities, things, yeah, that you have to pay for versus that you want to pay for. I don't want to pay my credit cards off, but I have to because I borrowed that money.
How many credit cards is a good number of credit cards to have? How many of you guys have credit cards? Raise your hand, you have a credit card. Raise 2 hands if you have more than 1 credit card.
Raise your hands if your parents are paying that credit card for you.
A lot easier. So how many credit cards is a good number? You guys, yell it out. How many credit cards is a good number to have? So we heard 3s and 1s. What's your experience?
I would say 1 to 2. And 2 only really because credit card fraud is.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Guys, please, if you want to talk, get out. If you want to talk, leave. There's classes you can go to, bounce. If you don't want to be here, if you want to be rude and disrespectful, if you want to have side conversations, leave. If you have a question, please raise your hand. There's no point in talking to each other when you can talk to the wonderful people that we have on stage. But if you want to have a side conversation, leave. If no one's leaving, I don't expect to hear a side conversation. I'm sorry, please continue.
Quite all right. So I would say 1 or 2 cards, really. 2 really, the only reasons I would think about for that is if you had something particular, that you were like, let's say a bigger purchase that you're paying off over time and you want to use 1 card for that and the rest for stuff that you're paying off every single month. That's a good reason. And also just as a backup on the odd chance that your credit card number is stolen. Credit card fraud is pervasive. And there's a good chance that at some point, particularly you're traveling, is when it gets really painful, and you'll find out that you have suddenly no use of that card and you're waiting for a new one to arrive. So it's good to have that as a backup. That actually happened to my husband when we were on our honeymoon. We got off the plane and he had all these alerts on his phone from the bank saying that someone had taken the number and spent a couple $1,000s at Walmart. So he was without that card.
Did they get anything good?
They got a couple of big TVs.
So what happened? This will happen. It happens to all of us up here. Maybe not Saket yet. It happened to you already?
Last month, my credit card got taken. I was woken up 4 in the morning from a $50 spending at McDonald's.
I'll add for the apps, and you maybe have seen in the news, the Grubhub hacks, the DoorDash, the Venmo scams, the Cash App scams. There's so many different ways to get your money stolen these days that weren't a problem for us, but credit card fraud is kind of the underlying thing. Yeah.
So can you talk to them about the process? So that happened to your husband, it happened to Saket. What happens next? Do you pay the bill? What's your plan of action?
Okay, so thankfully for question, usually they will process it, in a sense where if it's a matter of debate, it might hang on to your account for a little bit, but generally speaking, you just report it as fraud, and they will shut down that card number and give you a new card. You will still have, essentially your login won't necessarily change. You'll still be, they consider it, it's not like you're getting a new credit card, you're just getting a new physical card.
So would you recommend they read their statements, check the apps? What should they do to make sure that there's no fraud in their account?
Well, just generally speaking, if you're using a credit card, whether you're worried about fraud or not, you should be paying attention to your balance. It's really easy. In this day and age, you have subscriptions that renew. You have in-app purchases, things that you're buying online where you don't even necessarily, you're not thinking about your card, you're clicking a button on your phone and it goes through or it's going through automatically. So you always want to pay attention to how much you're charging so it doesn't get away from you and you can try to be paying off that balance in full. Understanding where your cash is going is just one of the best things you can do for yourself money-wise. But then that's also going to tell you when you see unusual activity and you'll know very quickly that I didn't make that charge.
You had a question? Here's your hand up. Here, please.
When you report credit card fraud, does the company give you back back your money, or are they getting a new card?
They usually won't even charge you. So, especially if you spot it quickly, so they'll wipe that purchase from the account. You know, where you, if you're paying with a debit card or there's debit card fraud, that's where it can get a little more expensive. That's why a lot of experts will say try to pay for things with a credit card if you can, because then you are trying to argue money back into your checking account. And, you know, they will typically refund you. There are still protections there. A lot of it for debit cards and sort of savings and checking account fraud is going to depend on how quickly you spot that that money has been taken out. But in the meantime, you are out that money. So that can be a problem if you are also trying to, you know, make your rent or other bills, especially if you have things coming out automatically. So there can be some other consequences if, you're sort of waiting in that hold period. Credit cards are usually, they're much faster to say, you do not owe us this money.
Good. Yen, you have your hand up. Why don't you go grab one of those mics and ask your question? Mr. Seiler's got it. There you go.
I know, and there's a lot of cases where identity theft occurs, like if a parent steals their child's social security number and then they open credit cards in their names and acquire a lot of debt that way, and then when the child grows older, they have a really terrible credit score. But I know that there are programs that help, fix your credit score, so could you talk about that?
Sure. So the thing you're talking about, when it's a parent or someone you know, they call it familiar fraud, which is, it's really scary. And a lot of people, sometimes people think about identity theft as this nameless, faceless hacker on the other side of the globe, but it can be somebody that you know, somebody that's in your life. The way that you often find out about identity theft, for some people it's because they applied for credit and they couldn't get it, and they're suddenly wondering why they have what seems to be this really bad credit score. You can get your credit report for free through annualcreditreport.com. There are 3 bureaus. Sometimes there's a little bit of different information bureau to bureau, but essentially you can go through and look, and that will tell you all the loans that have been taken out in your name, any credit cards, any debts, anything like that. It'll also tell you what entities maybe have been looking at your credit report. And you can do a few things in place there to prevent other people from having access to your credit. But in terms of once you've noticed a problem like that, there are a lot of good nonprofits, including the Identity Theft Resource Center, it's ITRC. They work with people who have had that happen to them, and it can be a very complicated process depending on what has happened. You might have to involve the police, you might be talking to credit bureaus, so it's not really, there are credit repair companies, but it's almost like you want to talk to some of these nonprofits that work specifically with identity theft victims to be able to figure out what those next steps are, to be able to clear things from your account. Sometimes, if you just notice an error on your credit report, you can work directly with the bureaus to get that fixed. It's not always an easy process. A lot of the times you're working with the lender and the bureaus, but for identity theft, oftentimes it's a heavier lift because you have to prove sometimes that it's not you, that this is somebody else who had your information and made those charges or took out that loan.
We had a question over here. Please stand up, and what's your name and what's your question?
I'm Jonathan.
Jonathan, do you have a last name?
Pincus.
There you go.
Right, I just wanted to ask, whenever you first get a credit card, right, where does your credit score stand? What do they define you as if you're just empty?
So if you're brand new to it, I mean, it's hard to say exactly where that would be. But as I said, the scores range from 300 on the low end to 850 on the top end. You're probably going to be somewhere in that mid to lower range of things. But that a lot of it, though, it's also hard to gauge because the lower end is often more for people who have shown that they use credit, but they have used it poorly. So a blank slate is better than a bad record, if that makes sense.
Right, but how do they know where to start you if you never did anything?
So they're gonna pull your credit reports from the bureaus, and then when they see that there is nothing there, they're going to ask some other questions about you, depending on that loan. Like, if you were able to go in and you said, like, well, I want to buy a car, and I have, $2,000 to put down, or however much, and I have a part-time job, so they can see that you have income coming in. They would factor that in. That helps them understand that maybe you're less of a risk. The old vaudeville hook that I should cut my answer. They're going to look at these other factors like your savings, your income. If you have somebody who's co-signing on a bigger loan that has good credit or savings or income, they're going to look at all of that together and make a decision about how risky they think you are as a customer.
Can you talk to them about having a cosigner? I always advise them, don't co-sign something for like a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Right.
Super risky. Some of them have asked questions about co-signing for parents or relatives.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys just, I'm sure you've all heard about it or had questions on it. What is co-signing, and then who should you or shouldn't you, or what questions should you ask when it comes to co-signing, whether it's credit card, student debt, a car loan, whatever it may be?
So co-signing essentially is you are lending yourself, or getting someone else to lend their income, their good credit score, some of these things that banks will look at when they're making loan decisions. You are also taking on responsibility for that debt. So if you are co-signing for somebody else's loan and they say, well, I'm not going to make payments, or I can no longer make payments on this, the bank's going to say, great, now it's your responsibility to make those payments because you have co-signed. So it can be something that helps you out to get better terms or to get a loan where you might not otherwise be eligible, but it can be very, very dangerous because you need to be aware that you could find yourself responsible for that. So I think you ultimately would only really want to do that in a case where you felt like you were okay with and could handle taking on that payment for somebody else. And if you are asking someone to be your co-signer, I would, really try to limit that to people that you trust and feel like that they would have your back. But also, that is where we'll see sometimes with, parents or other folks that they'll say, like, I will co-sign this loan for you, but like that they kind of have their own agreement that they will try to come to about when they're willing to step in and help, or that to be clear that they think it's your responsibility to make those student loan payments.
So a co-signer scenario, Saket co-signs my credit card. Who's responsible for the debt?
But if it's his credit card, then if he can't pay it, then that responsibility will fall onto me. Exactly. And I have to start paying.
Exactly.
Emma, you had somebody over there with a question, yes?
This is about credit cards. It's a couple weeks ago I had my room redone. So when we were buying furniture and everything for the room, we would go to IKEA and one credit card worked. He had a TD Bank card and that one worked. But then when we went to go get paint, the credit card no longer worked. We need to get a Chase card. So why is in some situations some credit cards work or sometimes they don't work?
Oh, in terms of a particular at a particular store?
Yeah, in that situation, yeah.
Well, it depends in part on what you're buying and where you're buying, but sometimes credit cards will reject a purchase because they wonder if it's fraudulent, if it feels like it's something that's a very large amount or out of character, or in a place where you normally don't shop. That's why typically when people travel, we'll say alert your bank that you're going to go across the country or out of the country, because otherwise they might just flag that. The last bell. So sometimes it can be just down to some of your typical purchase patterns. I would say that's something you'd want to almost call the bank and say, why did this happen, and dig into it a little bit further.
Emma, give me one in the back, one more.
Hi, my name is Ethan Yusupov. I have a cool question. Is it good to use a credit card daily instead of a debit card? And if so, which credit card should I use?
If you are extremely meticulous and you know exactly how much you're putting on that credit card and you commit, like, if you really are going to pay it off every day, sure, you can. There are a lot of rewards you can get from using credit cards and things like that. But in general, for your day-to-day spending, no, use a debit card because it's just like cash. You know how much is there. You can overdraft a debit card, that's all it is. But you generally can only spend the amount of money you have in the bank, right? Credit cards, you have a limit, but it's probably more money than you want to pay off at the end of the month or whatever. And credit cards also can come with variable interest rates, and they often, you know what your interest rate is this month, but it might go up, or your minimum payment is $50 this month, but if you charge a lot on that card, the minimum payment's going to go up too. So that, you have to be extremely responsible if you are going to use. I mean, people do it to use their credit cards all the time, again, to get those rewards, whether it's airline miles or cash back bonuses and things like that, that are really benefits of credit cards. But overall, I say debit card. And in terms of which one you get, I say compare. One, because every bank, to the last question, every bank is different, every credit card company is different, that they approve different people for different reasons. That's something I ran into when I was getting my first credit card. I didn't really have much of an income, and I didn't have any credit history besides my student loans. So the first one I applied to, I got rejected immediately. But Discover was like, yeah, we'll take you on. And there are some banks that are a little more lenient. And then you go, there's a lot of places that don't take a Discover card for some reasons, so there's it's good to have a good relationship with your bank, with a bank, and then see what products they will offer you, and when you have a good relationship history, they might be able to offer you better interest rates or something to that effect. But.
So, Mr. Liesman, you're on TV all the time. You're one of the smartest economic minds that we have. To get them to your level, where do they find information? Where do they research? Who do they listen to? Should they just hop on TikTok and listen to the 20-year-olds that are financial analysts all of a sudden? What are your thoughts?
Good question. I think it starts off with sort of what I was saying before, which is the courage to say, I don't understand. When I started off doing the economic stuff and the business stuff, I didn't know anything. I was putting a guy, I had the wrong company in bankruptcy one time, the whole day. I was writing a story about a local company that was in bankruptcy. And it turned out it was the other company that was putting this company in bankruptcy. And I had it wrong until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I figured out it was wrong. And I called somebody up and I said, what is going on here? So I didn't understand the concept of involuntary bankruptcy at the time. I get it now. I always think of my job as being smart enough to talk to smart people and know enough to listen to them. I think that one of the things that I'm always careful about is being humble about what I think I know. And it comes down to simple things like, does Mr. Smith spell his name with an E on the end? To the point where you ask Mr. Smith how to spell his name. To things like thinking you understand the inflation process, but then talking to somebody and them coming through and telling you something you've never heard before. And so you go out, for a reporter at least, an idea is the beginning. If you're an op-ed writer, if you're an editorial writer, an opinion writer, well, your idea is what you're writing down. But if I have an idea, I go out and ask people, what do you think of this idea? Is this a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is this something that makes sense? And so I talk to tons of people all the time. You read a lot on the side, but I also think, kind of get at this a little bit earlier in the college thing, knowing a lot of different things about different topics is really important, because the great things that are done in this world today are people who are bringing different things together. And if you look at, like, for example, the list of people who win Nobel Prizes, they studied all kinds of different stuff. And they don't necessarily win the Nobel Prize in the field that they studied. And so maybe they went to school and they took chemistry and physics, And then they found something that was a brand new medical apparatus that allowed us to do MRI imaging, you know? And so that's why I was sort of being a little skeptical about, yes, I completely agree with my colleagues. You want to be very careful about, you know, what you sort of learn when you go to college, and that it's kind of oriented towards a job, but you don't know. And so being out there, we were talking earlier about the liberal arts education, which I'm kind of a big fan of. You know, you may end up in finance, but it may help you when you talk to your clients to know a little bit of history about how the market works. So I also spend a lot of time, and I love crunching data. I love looking at the past and looking how things relate to each other. So learning to use Excel is a really big thing, I think, and learning to use, you know, different computer software and stuff is really important. I think just being curious and being humble about what you know will open up a world of knowledge to you.
Would you say watching CNBC is a great resource?
Is what, sorry?
A great resource?
I think so.
You guys like my shameless plug?
Well,
I would add in reading CNBC.com too.
Yeah.
And CNBC Make It. But honestly, like you mentioned social media, and if I can chime in there, so I think there's a couple of things that you want to think about, no matter who's giving you money advice, whether it's somebody on social media, you're talking to a financial advisor, or somebody who says that they're a money expert of some kind. You want to know first, what is their experience? Is this, or what is their expertise coming from? Is it from their personal experience? Is it from something they studied? Do they work in the field? Everything, like, even just if it's personal experience, like, you can't negate that. That's really powerful. But there are limitations to really any of those kinds of expertise. You know, if I'm talking about how did I manage student loan debt, that's going to be very different than how Kamaron managed student loan debt, or how you might, because everyone has their own, you know, their own story there, how much debt they have, what the kinds of loans are, the interest rates. So personal experience can have some limitations too. You want to know how somebody makes their money. On social, that might be an influencer who's getting paid to promote something. Even financial advisors, a lot of the folks you see on social, they're selling life insurance, for example. So if somebody is making their money by selling a particular product, or they just make their money by commissions, you know, that is going to give you a very different sense of like where that advice might be coming from than someone who is paid for their time. Right? Because, you know, if you're selling life insurance, then you might think that's, I mean, not to say that you don't need life insurance, but it might not be as exciting or necessary in the kind of way that they want to sell it to you for. You also want to have a sense of, is somebody a fiduciary? And I know that's probably like the $5 word here, so I will explain what that is. It essentially means somebody who is required to act in their client's best interests. And it's something that you'll hear across financial advisors, particularly certain kinds like CFPs, chartered financial analysts. They are required to act in their client's best interests. Other people who give financial advice and sell financial product are not held to that. So they might recommend things that are okay in your situation, but not the best that you could get, because they make maybe a little bit of money or more money by selling you this particular product versus another solution. So it's important to ask questions, not just of yourselves, but the people who are giving you advice.
In the current state of the economy, for even the four of you, with the way the economy is today, would you invest? Would you save? Would you pay off all of your debt? What would you recommend to our students? If they have a little bit of disposable income, should they invest it, save it, put it in their mattress? What would you recommend the way things are?
Not the mattress, but the other two for sure. We know that a lot of people do not have emergency funds or emergency savings, so that would be like the first thing if somebody came in to me and said like, hey, I have some extra money, what should I do with it? We'd be asking, well, do you have enough savings? Do you have you know, a nice cash cushion to see you through any kind of an emergency that might come up? And then what's your timeline? If you're putting aside money and you're like, hey, I want to buy a car next year, that's probably not money that should be in the market. But if you're like, I have, you know, I have savings, I have some short-term goals that are covered, I really want to invest, yes, absolutely get started investing.
Remember how I said there's no free lunch? There may be one free lunch. The one free lunch is what they call diversification. And there are returns that are higher than they would otherwise be if you diversify your investments. And what does that mean? It means instead of buying one stock, you buy a whole bunch of different stocks. Instead of buying just stocks, you buy some stocks and some bonds and some real estate. So the first thing is, when a guy comes along and says he's got a great idea, put all your money into it, don't do that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you should always save and live a little bit below the place you can live at, if you can afford it. When I was 21 and had my first job and made no money at all, I saved a lot of money. I don't know how or why, but eventually when the kids came along and I made more money, I didn't save anything. Not sure why that was. I think I know why that was. But in any event, we're talking about like your future self and your today self. You know, if you have a chance to invest right now, the thing you have, the big asset you have that you don't realize that you have over other people is time. I can wait and wait until that money appreciates over time. That is an asset you have. There's actually a fancy name for it. It's called time arbitrage. That you can sit there and wait for something, wait for that flower to come out of the ground, that bush to grow, that tree to grow, that somebody else doesn't have the time or the patience to do. You guys have that time, so you ought to use it. And like I was saying before, deciding maybe not to go to a concert, which I want you to go to concerts, don't get me wrong, but deciding not to go to a concert and investing or saving that money is something that will enable you later to go to more concerts and save money. The other thing that's going to happen, I know this is a little bit advanced, but here, if you get a job, your employer is going to offer you a variety of things, like different ways of savings at your company, like an IRA and stuff like that. Don't worry about what that is right now. But if somebody offers you free money, the right answer is, I will take 3 of them. Thank you very much.
I got a question on budgeting for you guys. Let's say we're earning a decent amount for our age and we don't have any debt. What should we do with that money? Where do we put it? Where do we like section it out?
I'd say save it. Save as much as you can. Investing, great. If you know how to use some of the apps or things, or if your parents have set you up with a 529 plan or an IRA, retirement fund kind of things, sure, invest some of it. But I can't stress enough, savings, having an emergency fund, even if you are just a college student and think like, I can't save money, put $20 aside, put $5 aside, and I think delayed gratification was an idea that didn't quite sit. I didn't accept it while I was in college. I wasn't, or I might have been here and there, but it was putting $20 aside so that in 2 weeks when I need $20 to get dinner, I have it, instead of just, buying 3 coffees last week because I just wanted coffee today.
Can you do delayed gratification? Can you go into that a little more thorough for them? We have a lot of students that come in Starbucks every day. I saw a Hermes belt in the hallway, which confused me because you can't wear it to an interview. So can you just talk a little bit to them about what delayed gratification would be financially?
Yeah, so impulse buys, right? We've been to Target. That's my crux. If I go to Target for groceries, I'm here to buy 3 things: milk, buttermilk, eggs. But I see a new pair of shoes, or I see this suit is all from Target, frankly. Or I see a new gadget or something that just looks a little cute, and I buy it because in that moment I feel joy, I feel excited. I'm like, I want a new thing, and your brain has these chemicals that go off and make you happy when I have a new thing. And then a week later, I have forgotten that I bought that thing, or I'm not using that thing anymore. The coffee is way gone, So it's just being able to take a moment and think, is this going to make me happy in the long run? Or is this something I absolutely need? Or, I only have $20 and I know I'm not getting paid again for another 3 weeks. So do I want to spend all that $20 in the first week? Being able to sit with yourself and say, I'm going to be a little bit uncomfortable. I'm just going to let this feeling like I need an iced coffee right now, I'm going to let it pass. Because it will pass. Feelings pass all the time. Or I think that I need something right now, and that's easy, especially when you're scrolling through TikTok or Instagram. I'm guilty of this too, of just seeing, oh my gosh, that's the cutest thing I've ever seen. I need to buy it right now. It's like taking a beat and giving yourself space to like really think. Often now, a habit I do now, if I'm in a store and I'm like just throwing things in my cart, I walk around the store a little bit longer. Not to pick more things in my cart, but to think, do I really need it? Am I like the physical pain of carrying this thing through the store has been enough for me to be like, I don't really need this, or I see the line and I'm like.
I just want to jump in right there because I think you raised some really important points. There's a lot of companies and people and things out there that are really professional about separating you and your money. They're looking for that thing that you got that turns you on to take of you. And what this is all about is making you professional and hanging on to your money. And that's what you can do. Because there's like the Twitters and the Facebooks and those guys who are advertising and on television. I remember I was trying to diet one day and I was watching a football game. You cannot diet and watch a football game because they're trying to sell you so much food. I didn't even realize it until I was dieting, and it's all this stuff with cheese in it. Everything has cheese. Melted, beautiful cheese. You're watching the football game. So they're out there trying to separate me from my money, trying to get me to buy that stuff. Did you guys, all right, this is a little weird, okay, but you remember have you guys heard they came up with this big diet pill that everybody can take and they can lose weight? Do you know what happened to Walmart's stock? Walmart's stock fell. So did like the company that owns like Arby's and McDonald's. Their stock fell because there's a lot of things out there that are trying to make you fat and trying to get your money to get you fat. And I don't even know where I'm going with this, but basically what they're trying to do is take you from your money, and what the professor here in this whole thing's trying to do is to try to make you professional at hanging on to your money.
Discipline. It's all discipline. It's the same idea of like, do I want to have dessert tonight or do I want to have a big breakfast?
Well,
Could there be cheese with it?
Cheese, absolutely.
You guys make all these great decisions, right? You're professional with your money. Guys, pay attention up here real quick. If you make a one-time investment of $10,000, at 25, so 7 years from now, it earns 6% interest per year. How much will that $10,000 turn into by the time you're 65? Right? So sorry, you're 25 years old, you have 10 grand, you get 6% per year for the next 40 years. That 10 grand turned into what?
Study under good people. I think that there's so many people out there that love to teach people and love to help young people, and I think there's a criticism of younger folks today about knowing everything already, and I don't think that's true of younger folks today. I think it's true of younger folks all the time. We all think we know more than we do, and it's always better to think you know less than you do. Be open and available for what people have to teach.